The holidays always felt chaotic. That must be just what this time of year is about, is just drama and chaos.
If I go over and choose to spend this Christmas day with dad, then mom's kind of on her own.
Maybe I shouldn't go do 2 Christmases on the same day. Maybe I should space them out and say that is not a good day for me, but if that's a great day for y'all, how about I join in on, like, a phone call? I think both of my parents wanted me to have a good time and be happy and celebrate, but there was also a little layer of sadness that they weren't all together.
Why are we doing this all in the first place? Is it just to like buy like materialistic kind of empty gifts for whatever reason? Or is there something deeper?
The chaos that I've felt from this in the past doesn't have to be the way I choose to move forward, and that has actually been really kind of cool.
Welcome to the Restored Podcast. I'm Joey Panarelli. If you come from a divorced or broken family, this show is for you. We help you heal your brokenness, navigate the challenges, and build healthy relationships so you can break that cycle and build a better life. My guest today is Danielle. Danielle lives in Central Florida and works as an occupational therapist. As a child of divorce, Danielle has found great healing in faith, counseling, and support groups, and she hopes that her story may help others as they continue on in their journey towards healing and wholeness. Now, while the rest of the world is filled with holiday cheer, people like us who come from divorced or broken families usually feel very differently. Navigating the holidays for us is just really complicated and brings a ton of emotions along with it. And while you can't magically make the holidays happy and drama-free, what if there was a way to make them less stressful and more enjoyable? That's what we discuss in this episode. Plus, we talk about the challenges that come from navigating 3 Christmases, or perhaps more in your case. You're not alone if you feel guilty for spending time with one parent, but not the other on a particular holiday. How feeling sad is actually okay, even though we often run from it. And we talk about some typical fears and barriers that complicate the holidays and some tips to handle them as well. And so if you dread the holidays or you just want to make them less stressful and more enjoyable, this episode is for you. Before we dive into the conversation, you'll hear Danielle and me talk about our holiday guide. Our holiday guide is a beautifully designed PDF that contains 5 tips, really practical tips to help you better navigate the holidays in a broken family. It's totally free, and you get, again, really practical advice that you're not going to hear anywhere else, a worksheet to plan out your time with your parents, a copy and paste template that you can edit for communicating with your parents, whether that's through a phone call or a message. And then most of all, the guide will just help you feel less alone and more in control when the holidays hit. And so if you want to get that guide, go to restoredministry.com/holidays, or just click the link in the show notes. I'll remind you guys at the end as well. And with that, here's our conversation. Danielle, so good to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I feel grateful to get to be here and just get to chat with you.
Yeah, no, when we've had previous chats, I was, just really impressed with you. And I wanted to bring you on because I know you've had to navigate the holidays. You are no stranger to this. So I thought it would be good to kind of chat about it and hopefully offer some guidance to anyone out there who's just really struggling with this whole holiday season, the upcoming holiday season, wherever we're at when they're listening to it. And so I wanted to start with a little bit of maybe context setting. So obviously, we're going to get into kind of the challenges with the holidays, some solutions that we've maybe both have found helpful and all that. But before we get there, I'm curious, set the scene a little bit to whatever degree you're comfortable sharing, like what type of kind of family gatherings you guys have and how many parents are you navigating, step parents, all of that.
Yeah. So growing up, I had a relationship with my dad's grandparents. So they were like a separate home. And then my mom was one, and then my mom's side of the family. So a typical Christmas looked like at least 3 Christmases. And then a typical Thanksgiving looked like whoever, whenever, however. It was kind of, that one was a little bit more of the, like, I don't want to say like the lesser holiday, but that was the one that as a family we didn't put a ton of emphasis on. But Christmas definitely looked like each weekend there was something going on. There were different groups of people to buy gifts for. Later in my life, I had the opportunity to reconnect with my dad. And so then that was another Christmas on top of that other one. So it ended up being around 4. I had a season as well where my dad and my stepmom, that was a Christmas together. And so that was newer to navigate as well on some of those expectations. So it had for me some overwhelming and also a little bit of excitement that you had all this extra time and other people to get to see. But at the same time, I would say overwhelming was the feeling of it whenever Christmas would come around. I felt like there was a lot of places to go and not enough of me to go around to everyone.
Totally. I love the way you said that, like overwhelming, not enough for you to go around. Someone said it recently, like too much bread, not enough like jam or something.
Yeah. That'd be so real. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And no, and part of the reason I wanted to have the conversation with you is because you've had so many different dynamics of, like myself, I actually haven't had to navigate the step family dynamic. I've had close friends of mine, I've walked with people who have, but you certainly have. So this is great that we're, as hard as that is, this is great that we're able to offer, you're able to offer some wisdom to everyone listening. So man, that's a lot of Christmases. And one of the points that we talk about when this comes up, the holidays and everything, is that because it feels so overwhelming, it's easy to not like think about it, to just put it off. And then when we don't think about it, when we don't put like a plan in place and communicate that plan, which is, relatively simple, but it can be hard, then it can get even more overwhelming and more stressful. Did you experience that?
100%. Like I feel like I thought about a lot of the conversations I wanted to have I would say when I was younger. So my step parents didn't come in until like my last year of high school, or my stepmom and my dad. So for me, I didn't know that I could say something. I just felt honored to get invited. So I didn't speak up a ton, if that makes any sense, on what would work for me or what wouldn't work. It just kind of was something like I should make it happen. And then a little bit more in my 20s, I didn't know that I could voice a little bit more of what I needed and what those holidays needed to look like.
Totally. And it's a great point that you make, that I think it does change. Like when you're in high school, you're kind of in one mode. You're often just going along with parents, and yeah, certainly want to set healthy boundaries, but there's a little bit of like a limit, especially depending on how like your parents react to those boundaries. When you get to college, there's a little bit more autonomy, a little bit more freedom, distance between you and your parents. But even then, we're kind of along for the ride. But then once you kind of move it on your own, maybe that's more of a distinguishing factor than just being a young adult after college. But yeah, I think that can certainly be the case. Not everyone goes to college, of course, but yeah, being out on your own, I think, can be like a new level of challenge. So I think there's like unique challenges in each of those. What was, of those kind of three scenarios, which was the most challenging for you? Would you say high school, college, or kind of the young adult phase, or did they all have their own kind of unique?
Young adult. I would say the young adult has been the hardest. I don't know about you, but this is going to sound a little like, at least in high school, I was like, okay, I know the groove. And then in college, there were built-in breaks. But young adult felt a little more challenging because it was the first time I felt like I had to decide what was right for me. And then I don't want to say present that, but then bring that into my family situation. Yeah. And that's like hard, I feel like, on two levels, right? Because there's the one of like, okay, well, I'm like changing the way things have been if I do something different. But then on like a little bit of a deeper side, it was kind of stopping and saying, okay, what do I want Christmas to look like? Like, what do I want Thanksgiving to look like? And that can feel really big. And I am learning to be a little bit more of a dreamer and give myself space where I can like, what could that look like? And I don't know if other people like us have a little bit of a struggle with that, where you're like, there's endless possibilities. So what do I want this season to look like? And how do I want to communicate that to my family? I would say is a huge piece.
I can totally relate with that. And yeah, it's like what I hear you saying is when you're a young adult, there's, instead of like just going along for the ride sort of thing, now you are the one making the decisions and kind of
Yeah.
somewhat of like imposing your will on the situation. And if, especially maybe your wish, desire, dream, whatever, isn't what a parent wants or your family wants, and then it introduces conflict, which is never fun. Especially when things are like, when the conflict isn't healthy. And so I totally get that. So I'm curious, like maybe talk a little bit more about that. What were some of the challenges and maybe the emotions that went along with those challenges, in addition to what you've shared so far when it came to navigating the holidays as a young adult or any other point?
Yeah, I would say the frustration that I felt with the holidays, and I think you're going to talk about it a little bit, is emotional exhaustion. So I would feel like, I don't know if you remember, there was a cartoon character, the Tasmanian Devil, and he would like, it would be this really pretty scene, and then you'd see him just come like spinning in, and things would get like all torn up, and then he would stop and he would kind of look like, oh wait, what happened? And then he would like spin off again.
Hmm.
Um, and I wouldn't say that's exactly how I felt, but it would feel more like a tornado. It would feel like I would kind of get caught up in the holiday season. It would feel very chaotic, and it would feel like I didn't really know what other people were expecting from me. I didn't know if I could be in all those places, but let me just go along for the ride and make myself kind of experience it. Was a lot of I would say probably that like beginning of young adult ages, because that was just kind of the norm. Like the holidays always felt chaotic. So why would that feel any different? That must be just what this time of year is about, is just drama and chaos and maybe just feeling a little stressed. And that's just a part of it. And then I didn't realize that I could kind of pivot out of that and turn into something where I got to kind of how we were talking about, like having a little bit more autonomy, that I could say, hey, maybe that's too much for me to do in one day. Maybe I shouldn't go do two Christmases on the same day. Maybe we should maybe I should space them out and say that is not a good day for me. But if that's a great day for y'all, how about I join in on like a phone call or like a FaceTime
Mm-hmm.
call to say hey for a minute instead of physically being in
Hmm.
that same room.
I like that.
So I would say it was a shift from like what felt like chaos into a little bit more calm, and a little bit more peace for that time of the year.
I love that. And I want to go deeper into that. One of the things I wanted to add for anyone maybe newly married and has maybe a baby or a couple of kids too, that adds like a new layer to it as well. Cause I remember with me, you kind of realize how, like, in a new way, how exhausting it can be to do two Christmases, three Christmases, like whatever it is. And then you bring kids along and it's like, my goodness, this is exhausting for them as well. And so that was a little bit more of a wake up call, I think, for me too. Cause I was like you too. I just kind of put my head down, just got through it. And then thankfully before kids, but especially with kids, it was like, wow, okay, I can't like do this to other people. I need to set some healthy boundaries, even more so than I had in the past. And so totally tracking with you there. I'm curious, maybe I know we're talking about like our experiences through this, but what did you see in the people around you? What kind of negative impact did all these like challenges and drama and like all these events going on, whatever else we want to add, have maybe on other people around you, whether that's your siblings or your parents? I'm just curious what you observed there.
Yeah, I think a little bit for my parents, it would be maybe like some comparison of like, well, how was that experience with them? And it could have been like the lens that I was seeing it through, but sometimes there might be comments that I would take as hurtful of like, oh, it sounds like you had a really good time with them with a little bit of a negative undertone. And
Mm,
again, I think both of my parents wanted me to have a good time and be happy and celebrate. But there was also a little layer of sadness that they weren't all together. I know I felt a little layer of that sadness when we were coming together. To be quite honest, I was the one who was bouncing between all of the places. So in chatting with just some like siblings in that sense, they would kind of express when we would have two Christmases, that would be like, oh yeah, we have, it's a lot. The holidays are crazy. And even now as adults, when we'll kind of talk about it, there's, I would say, a little bit of like an unspoken thing of like, hey, the holidays are just gonna be crazy. How about we catch up in like January, or how about we catch up in like do something beforehand, is just kind of understood because
huh.
they also have other sets of sibling, like other sets of parents, and it's branched a little bit more. So I would say their experience has been, I haven't gotten to talk directly about them with it. So that would actually be a really great thing to get to do, if when that door opens. But I would say just kind of this roller coaster that we're on a little bit together of like, okay, it was nice to see you. Like, great to see you too. We've got like a few others that we got to go see as well.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe not quite like a receiving line at a wedding, but something where you're just kind of moving through the process a little quickly.
Totally. No, I totally get that. There's not as much depth. It's more like width or breadth. And yeah, I'm with you there. You made me think of something that I think a lot of parents experience, which is almost like a rivalry between the families, or between, this parent and that parent, like thinking like, oh, well, if I give the kids more gifts, then they'll want to come to this side of the family, or whatever it might be. And then one parent might have more resources and money to do that, another one might not, so it makes them feel like they're not able to give as great of an experience. So definitely a lot of tricky dynamics. Just want to acknowledge for the parents too, but for us, I know in some ways, like, yeah, I felt guilty. It's like, okay, if I go over and choose to spend this Christmas day or Christmas Eve with dad, then mom's kind of on her own, or vice versa. And it's just like you can never really please everyone, and there's always someone kind of missing out. So that certainly, that heaviness that you mentioned, I can relate to. And I think it is unfortunate, and that's where I think some planning ahead and setting expectations and having like somewhat of a plan to just connect with each parent if you can in some way, even if it's simple, and assuming you're on like good terms, then I think it can bring like a lot of peace, that it's like, okay, I'm not neglecting them, it's just this isn't their time right now, their time will be the next day or coming up soon.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a great point with that too, Joey, when you were talking about like it's their time and there can be a little bit of rivalry. And if I spend one, I would sometimes feel that way. Like if I spend this time at my dad's grandparents' house and not with my mom on this Christmas holiday, then I would internally put this pressure of like, well, then the time I'm with her has to be extra great, because she'll feel bad. So I need to make that like a really special time, which no one put that pressure on me. It was just a lie, an internal pressure that I was building up for myself, like, okay, I need to bring my A game or, help make it great to help cover up this gap that it's so sad that we're not all together instead of just enjoying the time that I have with them. And this is going to sound like let the sadness be there. It doesn't have to be the whole piece, but it's okay if someone feels uncomfortable. It's okay if I feel slightly uncomfortable. It's okay if there's a little bit of sadness that not everyone's together, because that is a consequence of divorce, right? It's a death of the love my parents shared together and our parent. Like anyone who has experienced divorce, that's a piece that's present. And just like you would grieve a family member who's not there on Christmas and you'd feel sad, I think it's okay to touch that place. I don't think it's okay to live there the whole season. I don't think it's okay to avoid that whole season, but I think that was something I ran from a lot, was just that like, okay, well, we can't feel sad about this, instead of kind of just acknowledging it for a minute or acknowledging it in a healthy, appropriate way, and then moving on and enjoying what Christmas is today or what Thanksgiving is today or what the holidays are today.
That's so true. Like, especially, yeah, in our culture today, we tend to look at like the quote unquote negative emotions, like the things that feel ucky and uncomfortable, and we try to just like get out of them, run from them. But there's something about like kind of just letting it happen, sitting in the midst of it, that's so powerful. I love that you brought that up. My daughter tonight, it was so funny. Lucy, she's 3 now, and my son John Paul is 4 months old, and he was crying, and I was like just about to get him out of the car, and so but Lucy was next to him when he was crying, and she was like had I think her hand on his head, and she was saying, "It's okay to feel sad, buddy." It's like so profound. I'm like, wow, something like, thank God, like that she knows that. And I think it applies here too. Like it's okay to like feel sad. It's okay. You don't need to like try to extinguish that or run from it. Like you said so well, you can kind of just be in the midst of it. And in the business world, one of the concepts that's kind of helped me that relates here is like you're in any career, really, there's always like so many problems to solve and things to like deal with. And just like we're talking about, it can be overwhelming. And so this whole idea of like, in business or in any sort of like leadership, you're kind of faced with like putting out fires, right? You're like the fireman, firewoman. And this whole idea that like, well, sometimes some fires have to burn. And one of the things I learned early on was like, yeah, sometimes like the small fires especially have to burn. Like we just have to let those burn. Like we don't need to put them all out and solve every situation, which for people like us who are more type A, that's hard. but
Yeah.
but I think there is a bit of surrender like in that can bring a lot of peace too. So it is an interesting like dichotomy though, kind of what we're saying here is like between like kind of taking charge and control and having a plan and communicating that plan, but at the same time like having like the flexibility and the openness and the surrender of like, well, everything might not go according to my plan, and if it doesn't, like, am I going to be destroyed, or can I be adaptable and just be like, what, that's okay, like there's something good that can come out of even this situation. So it's an interesting dynamic between like flexibility and having like some boundaries and a plan. Any thoughts on any of that?
Yes. Yeah. Because I think there's a phrase that's like essentially you're creating a plan and you're holding it very loosely, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So there is something in place, but if that alters and changes, it's okay to let it pivot to a degree, is at least kind of what I'm learning to experience, instead of holding so tight to every tradition that needs to be kept a certain way, or on the flip side, not caring about anything and not voicing any of the things that I would like to see happen during the holidays, for sure. This is going to sound really silly, but one year I did, and probably a little type A. So if anyone is not this way, like I respect you and I totally feel you on that. But there was one year I actually did like an itinerary because I was coming home for a week and I just needed it so I felt organized with like how things were going to be. But it actually was super helpful for my mom and extended family members that I was going to see. I just kind of like shot it out with a little email on it that said like, it's okay if these plans change, but this was just some of the things that we talked about wanting to do. And so I started putting them on different spaces in the calendar. It's okay if they shift, but I just wanted you to know that I heard you and I care about spending time with you and I'm looking forward to it. So I just wanted to put those things that we talked about that were important on a calendar. Please feel free to adjust it how you need to. And so that, at least for me, was really helpful. But that's kind of what I mean by the idea of like make a plan, but hold it loosely. It's kind of like something that you can kind of piecemeal and move around a little bit if you need to, but you have the like the blocks in place and you have the foundation in place a little bit.
Okay, yeah, almost like a Lego like build or
Yes,
something.
thank you. Legos, yes. Like thank you. Like you're building with the Legos, and it's okay if the details change up a little bit, but you've got the idea.
Yeah, wow, no, I can relate. And I think as much as you and I are like type A, so I'm sorry for like turning some people off to this, but I think there is so much of a benefit to kind of bringing out maybe that part of your personality that you don't use often of like being more of a planner because it does bring a lot of peace and structure and helps set expectations. Because I think that part of the reason I've seen the holidays can be so tricky is like everyone has their own idea of what's going to happen, and then when the expectations aren't met, naturally disappointment follows. And then if disappointment like broods for long enough, resentment starts to seep in. And that can be really devastating for any sort of relationship, especially relationships with our parents. And so I think it's, yeah, setting those expectations like we've been talking about is like really, really huge. And that's actually, in the guide that we're going to talk about in a second, that's the kind of itinerary planning is something we definitely recommend. And I remember after we built the guide, I just like used the tips and the resources in it to plan out the holiday for myself. And it was great.
Yeah.
It was like really helpful. I was like, this is awesome. And it wasn't just me who built it. It was like our team too. My face is on it so that if anyone's head gets chopped off, it's my head, but it's, or my
I
name.
love it.
But it was certainly a team effort and definitely pulled on wisdom from a lot of different people. But anyway, I think whether you're a planner or not, being a planner for this thing this season, I think is going to only benefit you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're not a planner too, like for me, it's a lot harder to just sit and be still in some of those moments. So I'd say, like, if someone who's listening is not a planner, like, lean into that non planning part of you because there may be some really beautiful spontaneous moments that someone else in your family who is a planner, like, helped create space for, and you can call your family into attention for that. We have a family member who is really good at kind of just creating some fun moments that I could not because I just don't work that way. But when they do, they just bring such light and such levity and some jovialness. So if that's you, lean into that strength. If you're just feeling in that moment like this is a time we need to turn on a movie and watch it, or we need to sing, or going and looking at Christmas lights sounds really fun right now. Let's go get in the car and go do that. That's okay to also bring that out in this time as well.
I love that. And what I hear you saying too is it's okay to have like, if you're not a planner, a simple plan, like just the main pieces, the main like components of the building that you're trying to build. You don't need to have like every detail in the furniture like figured out. It's like okay to go do that a little bit. That's no, that's really helpful. And even if you are a type A, just make sure you put in like some flex time in your schedule,
Yeah.
like spontaneous time.
100%. Write it in there. It's really good. It's super helpful. We get to keep practicing it. It's very, very good.
I love it. I love it. So I'm curious, Danielle, how did you find out about the holiday guide?
I think so. I had read it in your book, It's Not Your Fault. And then I think I listened to a podcast similar to like this one where you would have the tip guide. And I was like, I need to apply this year. Like I've heard it. Let me just apply it. Let me see how it actually works. And that's how I found out about it.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And I think that's it. Like it's simple. It's not super complicated, but it can be hard to execute on because there's just a lot of like emotional resistance. So I'm curious, like what sort of resistance did you maybe face before in doing some of this stuff? It's not like we invented this stuff. We're just kind of saying like, here are the things that you need to do that will make the holidays more enjoyable, less stressful, yada, 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 less overwhelming. So I'm just curious if there was any resistance, even with like using the guide or kind of putting the tips into action.
Absolutely. I would say my biggest resistance was probably a little bit of pride in there of like, okay, well, I know how to work this, so I've got it figured out. I don't need to jump into it. Some of it was, well, it's too simple. Could it really work? So a little bit of doubt in there. And then I would say, I think the other one, and I've heard someone say this before, a little bit of the unknown, right? Like if I step in and I try something different, how much am I going to rock the boat? I know what this discomfort is like and it's consistent. This other thing is so unknown. What is that jump going to look like? So a little bit of fear in there too. I would say were some emotions I was journaling through and just, I think finally just came to a head of like, I should just try at least a couple of these things. They seem like good ideas. Yeah.
Cool. No, I love it. And I get all of those. Like, yeah, I'm pretty good at pride, so
Yeah.
I can relate to that. And the whole I forget the term for this, but like when we think less of things that are simple,
Yes.
or sophistication bias, where it's
Hmm.
like, oh, it's so simple. Like, could it really be effective and helpful? And yeah, I think like when I've been challenged in those situations and I do the thing, I'm like, wow, okay, this is great. Even like we talked previously, I think about Atomic Habits, the James Clear book. Yeah. And like the whole idea in that book is the 1% improvement, which is
Hmm.
like, really? Like 1%? I want like 80% or 100%. Like, I'm actually really smart and I can do that.
Exactly. I can change myself overnight. It's going to be great. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I get it all planned out in my head. It's perfect, and then it doesn't happen. But no,
100%.
I think that sophistication bias is super real. So I'm glad you brought that up. And then the unknown too. Yeah, it is scary. Especially some people have a little bit of a track record with like putting boundaries in place with their family. Others
Mhm.
don't. And so I think it's definitely scarier for people who are just starting that for the
Yes.
first time. If there's a little bit of a track record and they speak up, then there's a little bit of, oh, okay, the parents saw this come in, siblings, family, relatives. Because relatives too, I know we haven't really talked about them as much, but that can be like another like aunts and uncles and people who love you, who want to see you, who it's like
Mhm.
a lot of the time it's just like good desires. I know there can be some drama in there, maybe some twisted desires at times, but yeah, I think like a lot of it is at the core is a good desire. They just want to be with you. So just want to acknowledge that for a second. But yeah, no, that's really good. Any other resistance or barriers that you hit on those super well? The pride, the kind of simplicity, so sophistication bias, the unknown, and I forget what the other one was, but that was a good point too.
No worries. I think those are all the ones I've got for right now. But if I think of any others, I'll let you know.
No, I love it. And what about the guide itself was most helpful, would you say, for you in particular?
I would say for me, like the big highlight one that I came away with, I am an evangelical Christian, and I know not everyone listening is, but I would get so caught up in Christmas and starting to like, I wouldn't necessarily say dread it, but not embracing it. And there's a piece in the guide where you talk about coming to God and praying to God, but also like recognizing it as a time for celebration. And that is such a great gift, right? Like I get this is a time where in my faith belief, the God of the universe chose to wrap himself in flesh and walk among us so that he would suffer in the way I would, he would feel what I did so that in those moments when I'm walking around years and years later, I could know that the God I'm talking to has felt with me, has walked with me, and has experienced what I'm experiencing right now on a deeper level than I am. And that is just such a gift. And that is something that has given hope and peace and joy, not at this time of the year, but throughout the year. So it's such a beautiful way to end our church, like end the church calendar and the year calendar, and then kick off into the new year. That getting to stop and realize that for me just really anchored and gave a why. Like, why are we even gathering this season? Why am I choosing to stop and celebrate and be around my family and give a lot more time to gathering with friends this year? This is why. This is the reason for this moment and for this season. So that one I think just really anchored me a lot because when I go into those family gatherings, it feels a lot less pressure of it has to be something that I've seen on TV or this image that I've made up in my head. It's all coming from the grace of God that I get to walk into these spaces and have these relationships. And these are the parents that he has chosen for me. And even if you're not a believer in Christ or a Christian, I would even say just finding a reason to celebrate at the end of the year. It is a time of joy and of hope, and kind of having that why when you're entering into it for me has been really helpful because all the rest of it can be distracting and can be really kind of chaotic and get caught up in people pleasing or in keeping a boundary or not keeping a boundary or trying to squeeze one more thing into an already packed schedule instead of just saying why, like, what is the whole reason for doing this? Why am I doing this at this time? So I know it's like a bigger one, but that big why kind of helped put more of the practical pieces that were really helpful to me into place.
I love that. No, you're so articulate, and I definitely can relate on so many levels with that. Yeah, it's so important because I think what I hear you saying is it gives like reason and purpose behind like some meaning behind like the effort that you're about to go through with this whole season, which is for people like us can be certainly extra challenging. I know we'll get into this in a little bit, but even now, thinking ahead to the holidays this year, Thanksgiving with my side. So I'm married, for anyone who doesn't know, and we try to spend like either Christmas with my family and then like Thanksgiving with my wife's family or vice versa. But on my side, of course, it's split in two. I know some families, have 3 or 4 splits, which is super challenging. So it's tricky to kind of figure out, who are we spending the holiday with? I'm such a nerd. I just created it somewhat recently in my phone. Like I have an Apple Note that just like has tracked the last like 5 or more years of like who I spent each holiday with. Cause I kind of forget, to be honest with you. And so that's like one extra tip for anyone watching is like listening. It could be helpful, and your future self will be thankful
Yes.
if you do that, because you can look back. And now I'm just going to keep adding to that, especially now with kids. Like things can just be a lot, and you forget like what did we do that year, and so it would just save you a little bit of time and hassle if you kind of keep track of it. But on that note, I don't think it's maybe a good healthy thing to feel like you like owe your family or your parents to always be with them for a particular holiday. I think it's more of like a gift that you can give to them, and hopefully they can receive, and you can like it's a beautiful thing. But I think there can be an unhealthy dynamic if there's like a lot of pressure. So we try to avoid like language like it's your holiday. It's
Yeah.
like, no, it's Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever anyone's celebrating, and we are choosing to be with you. We want to be with you. And I've even tried to use that language with my parents. It's like, no, it's like, Dad, I want to see you. We want to see you, Mom. We want to be with you. We want to see you. We want to visit you, all that. So I found that helpful as well. But you're right. Like, it's so important to like get that foundational stuff of like, why are we doing this all in the first place? Is it just to like buy like materialistic kind of empty gifts for whatever reason? Or is there something deeper going on here?
Yeah, and I found like having that depth makes the practicals feel a little more grounded, if that makes any sense. So, in some of those simple things, a couple other things you talked about in your guide was having like a little bit of a support system if it's a little more challenging. And in years past, I would find that I would end up calling my friends during the holidays with like some kind of drama blow up for like, I just need to vent. So the year I found your guide, I was more proactive with it. And it was just great I have 4 friends that I feel very close with where I can just share my heart and share my thoughts and share my feelings as they're happening. And so I want to say it was like after Halloween. I think I texted them and I was just like, hey, the holidays are coming. This is a time where I tend to get really stressed and I feel overwhelmed. Is it okay if I send you text to just tell you what my plans are? Is it okay if I text you before I go to these plans and possibly text event? And can you be praying for me during this time? And in years past, I'd always, you just felt like it was a burden or like, oh, well, they're busy with their family. But honestly, it brought us a lot closer. And I think a lot of my friends, some of them come from intact families and some of them don't. And the ones that don't, I have just felt like such a like deeper closeness with them from having just had that one moment of practically being open and starting that conversation early of like, hey, this time is sometimes hard for me and I'll shut down or I'll shy away from it. So that one was just, I think, really helpful for me to set that up. And then I know we've talked a lot about the itinerary, but making a plan and clearly communicating with family has been like such a gift. And we do, growing up, my mom was really big on like, I grew up in Orlando, so we had theme parks close by. So the thing was always, if we went to a theme park, it was like, what's the one ride you want to do today so you don't feel disappointed? And then whoever we were with, like those were the first few rides you would do. So we've kind of carried that on into the holidays a little bit. So I like rebirthed it a couple of years ago of like, all right, what's the one thing this Christmas that you want to do together that if that season passed, you would feel sad if we didn't do? And it's actually been really helpful because I think sometimes I have all these pictures of what Christmas would look like, but I don't remember what my mom's was last year, but mine last year was like, it sounds so simple, but I wanted to sit on the couch with her and watch the Christmas movie Elf and eat like popcorn and red and green M&Ms. Like that was it. I was like, that just sounds so fun to me. I want to do it. And we did. And it was really just such a nice expectation setting with her. And so
Yeah.
I found that really helpful to just practically ask, what is something that you would like to do this Christmas? And I can offer if I can do it or not. Kind of jumping, I know we've talked a lot about itinerary and practice, but just asking your parents what they're expecting for this Christmas, and just being clear if you can or can't do it in a very loving and gracious way, I would say is just kind of been helpful. Again, coming all from that place of like love and joy. That's the whole reason we're getting together this season is for love and hope and joy and celebration.
So good.
Yeah.
So many things you touch on that I want to hit on. I love the whole like asking permission from your friends. I think there's something like so good about that. That's like very respectful. Not that it's like bad to reach out to friends when you're in a tough moment and vent. I think good friends will be there for you during those moments. But I think there's something about like the proactiveness that you brought out, which is awesome. And then getting their permission, their yes, and then they're even like buying of like, yeah, no, I want to help. And it's not just like I'm allowing you to do this thing. No, I like actually want to be there for you. And often it's not, something that's super time intensive. It's just being there for a touch point, and that's kind of all we need, which I think is so so good. And I love that you're kind of like we're focusing kind of maybe one big thing with each person,
Mhm.
or even not big thing, but like main thing with each person. And I think that's so good. And then yeah, when it comes to the expectations, I heard this recently, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I think what I like to add that happiness equals expectations minus reality.
Yes. So it's happiness equals expectations minus reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
That feels so right. Yeah.
I can't. It was some business guy who said it, but
Oh,
and the funny thing is like we can't control reality. So there's one variable there that you can control, and that's your expectations. So I think like setting simple expectations, that is what I learned from you there. I think it's really wise.
yeah, absolutely. And I know there's like a couple people out there who will say like there's a whole dichotomy out there of like, well, don't have too low of expectations, like you should
Sure.
have some high. But I think in at least in my journey of being an adult child of divorce, some of this ground still feels really new. And so I think for me, if you're further along in this process and you're like, hey, I can ask like a little bit more and like up the expectations, absolutely go for it if that is like built and that is there. But I think staying realistic, at least for me, is healthy with expectations. And then kind of going back to that idea of like having a dream session about what the holidays is going to look like if there's space to be honest with yourself and journal, like, what do I expect this Christmas to look like, or this Thanksgiving or this holiday season to look like? And just be honest, like with yourself, and then looking at it and seeing like, hey, is that going to be a reality this year? Or am I shooting a little too low, or am I shooting a little too high? Just to put it on paper and out of your head, I think has been helpful. Yeah, is just really helpful. So it's not rattling around in there.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. And the other thing that I found helpful, and I know others have too, is just throwing that off of someone too, just being like, hey, here's my plan. What do you think? Is this a good plan? It's nice that, you could do that with a significant other, like a best friend, siblings, perhaps, of being like, hey, what do you guys think? And I've done that with my siblings too, especially if we're all going to be together. I'll be the nerd who writes up the itinerary and be like, what do you guys think? And and then like,
Exactly.
such a nerd. Like this is
You know what though? Someone needs the nerds. Like
oh.
someone needs it to just put a little structure in there, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, no, it's helpful, but it's been great. And then we kind of make adjustments on the fly or even beforehand. And then it's like, okay, this is great. Like we're kind of talking about expectations, we're tweaking the expectations where, like you said, I think it's a good point. Like we don't want to have them so low. It's like, well, the holiday is just going to be horrible. Like we're just gonna like, I'm just gonna skip out this year, which can be tempting at times. But yeah, I think, talking it through with someone, I know we're kind of going on about this, but guys, it doesn't need to be complicated. Like literally whip out your iPhone or your whatever phone you have. If you don't have a phone, like grab paper or whatever, something you can draw on, and then just like come up with a simple plan. That's it. And one of the things that, like you said before, in addition to kind of prioritizing maybe experiences,
Yeah.
you could also prioritize people. Which might sound kind of mean, but it's like, no, I mean, not everyone in your life can have top priority. So it's like, okay, when, for example, I go back to the Chicagoland area, there's so many people there that I love. There's so many people I want to see. There's friends I want to see. There's family I want to see. There's, obviously my immediate family, there's relatives. And I like often am not there for super long, maybe 3 days or 5 days, 7 days at most, I would say. And it's just so tricky now, especially with kids, to see everyone. And I feel horrible, but it's like, okay, no, I have to have like a priority list of like, okay, this is my, for lack of a better term, like my A list. These are the many people I'm going to see, mom, dad, now it's my mom's in a different place, but I'm going to see dad. I'm going to see, my brother Anthony, my sister Mia, and then some like these close friends for this reason or that reason. And then maybe like some aunts and uncles. And that's like as much as I could do, unfortunately. And there's a recent trip that we took to that area. And I, again, just really wanted to reach out to all these friends and plan all this stuff. Like I really, if any of them are listening right now, like I wanted to see you all really badly, but I knew there was a particular reason that we were out there. And so we kind of anchored onto that reason. There was a baptism actually that we were going out for. We anchored onto that reason. And then like everything was kind of built upon that. And then anything that didn't fit just didn't fit, unfortunately. and it's an unfortunate thing, but that was like really freeing and helpful. So having that kind of not just list of experiences, which I think is really wise. I love that you have that, but also a priority of kind of the people that you're going to see and spend time with.
Yeah, you said that so well, Joey. And I love how you said as well, like it's not to be mean, it's just to set expectations realistically. And that's something that time is finite, right? We don't have if you're there for a week, like 7 days is all you got. Like there's only so much you can do because you still need to sleep. You still need to make sure like you're eating. You still need to make sure like you're drinking water. You still like all of the things to keep ourselves up. Like you still need to be doing during that time as well, right? And I think that's something we forget when the holidays happen that December only has 31 days in it. It doesn't get like a bonus day. And Thanksgiving is
It's a great
only
idea, though.
right. It would be so great. Like just throw that in there. But it is still finite. So it's okay to just tell people proactively, like, I'm so sorry I'm not gonna be able to see you like this season. Like, is there another time I could see you? And just share your heart of like what feeling disappointed that you can't be there or see them or
Yeah.
just be I would say just be honest and clear. Like clarity is kindness instead of trying to I'm going to use the word contort yourself or feel like you have to please someone or you have to get yourself into a bunch of different places at once. It's okay to say that is something I cannot do this year. I still love you. I still care about you. And I'm still wishing you the best for the holidays.
Mm.
What can we do to stay connected during this season?
I love that. And that's such a good template of like, I love like the kind of heartfelt apology, affirming that they're important to you, that you wish you could, and then planning, like you had said earlier in the conversation too, planning something separately that you can do to invest in the friendship relationship. So that's awesome. I think all of those things are really, really good. And the thing, only thing I'd add, because it's just so common these days, is just like, avoiding the temptation to ghost people too.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that. It's just so rare. Like, and I think the only motivation a lot of us need is like, think of how that feels when you're ghosted. It's horrible. You don't like that, and I don't like that, and so it's like someone else wouldn't like that either. And so it hurts far less to, like you said, be clear, and maybe it stings a little bit of like, oh man, I really wanted to see that person, as opposed to this like drawn out kind of painful, I don't know, mucky ghosting that just is not a fun thing to go through. And I'm curious, kind of what were the results or the outcomes of, using the guide? You already alluded to some of them, but I'm curious, like, did it make things better? Like, how did it help you when you were actually going through it, not just like the before and the putting the tips into action? Like, what came of it?
Yeah. What came of it for me is like one, I had clarity for me when I was going into the holidays. So I knew what to expect, which is such a gift. And then for me, whenever there is some clarity and a little bit of structure, it actually gave me space to really be present and just kind of have fun. And I know that sounds so odd, and a handful of people might be like, that shouldn't you have fun all the time? But it's hard. It's hard during the holiday season sometimes when in my head I'm planning the next place I'm going to. So when it was just all laid out, I felt like I got to be present with the family that I was with and with the friends that I was with. And that was just such a gift. And from that, I felt more connected. One, with my family when I got to see them, and two, like with those friends that I was texting with. And it was actually really fun to celebrate with them. So, like, when they would text and say, like, hey, how did that go? I'd be like, oh, it went really well. And to get like a heart emoji or like a hands up emoji, they're like, that's so great. I'm so happy for you. Like, that was so cool, to realize, like, wow, I got to celebrate and really just enjoy and relish this season a lot more than I had in the past. And I'd even say too, Joey, it gave a little more. I know we've been talking like a lot about like autonomy versus surrender, autonomy, and then we were talking about structure versus surrender a little bit.
Mhm.
But it gave some space to realize that like the chaos that I've felt from this in the past doesn't have to be the way I choose to move forward. And that has actually been really kind of cool. It's carried over into some other areas. And so I would say it made it better for me for sure. It's been a little bit of a play, so I don't want to say it like it was perfect like right off the get-go, but it's been really fun to kind of play with and have more conversations with family, and just I think even for myself learn how to be a little clearer and learn how to say it kindly and how to say it respectfully, but also at the same time learn how to stand my ground when I need to stand my ground, which has been kind of cool.
No, that's good. I was going to say we can certainly give you your money back because we actually guarantee that the holidays will be flawless once you go through this guide. No, and for the record, it's completely free. It's completely free, so you will certainly get your money back if you didn't benefit from it. But No, we've heard a lot of great things. Just, yeah, again, putting it into action is the key. And that would be kind of the challenge as we get to the end of this conversation here is, yeah, it's one thing to know these things. They're not complicated. It's another thing to do them, like we've talked about before. So that would be the challenge. But before we get kind of to the very end, I'm curious, you talked about kind of the benefits for you. Did you see any benefits for maybe your parents or siblings or the other people around you because
Yeah.
we're a little bit more proactive and went through this whole kind of system or process? You called it a system when we talked before, and I was like, that's true. It's a little bit of like a system to make the holidays less stressful and more enjoyable.
Yeah, no, it worked really well. I would say, at least for my mom, it gave her a lot of structure, which was really nice, and it opened the door to have some conversations about the holidays earlier. So that's been kind of fun to get to know her a little bit more as an adult of some of the, things that she values during the holiday time. And then I would say for some of my siblings, it actually opened the door for us to kind of communicate a little more clearly on what does work during the holidays and what doesn't. So that's been, I would say, a really cool gift to kind of carve out time to just be siblings together. It doesn't have to always be around like a family holiday. So that's been kind of fun to enter into in an adult season. Yeah. And then I would even say too, for some of the extended family that has been kind of also navigated, it's taken some pressure off for them too. When I wouldn't say I take the lead, but even just communicating or starting that conversation as something as simple as like, "Hey, I'd love to see you guys." Like they'll shoot back a text of, "Oh my gosh, we'd love to see you too. When would work? Like we know you're busy. What works best for you?" And so that's actually been a really cool thing. I didn't realize they were waiting. Sometimes someone's just waiting for an invitation, and yeah, it opened the door to have some time together, and that was a real gift.
I bet they really appreciate that. Yeah, it's amazing. And just going back quickly to the thing you said about presence, I think that's so good. And I've experienced both sides of that, where in situations where, yeah, your mind's like in a million places because you're trying to maybe please everyone, or you're thinking about like, man, we have so much on the schedule to do, so many people to see, so many parties to go to, whatever. And yeah, it can be so overwhelming that you just skip the present moment. You're not there. Like literally, you like don't really hear what people are saying, and you're not like present in the conversations. But on the flip side, like you said, if you kind of simplify things and put a little bit of a plan and set those expectations, communicate those expectations, that plan, and then you could actually just live the moment. And there's no need to, yeah, be in a million places. So I love that point. I was curious, what would you tell someone maybe who's watching, listening right now, and they're unsure about maybe getting the guide and starting to use the tips, like put them into action? What would you say if they're a little bit, there's some hesitation there?
Oh, great one. First, I would say take a deep breath. Um, and I would ask you to be a little curious about that hesitation. If you're feeling a little uncertain or a little bit of trepidation about getting the guide, just kind of ask yourself what is kind of blocking you from that. I wouldn't stay there too long, but regardless, I would get it. The information is great, and if that's something that you still kind of work through in your head and your heart, that's okay. But I would really say, be curious about what's holding you back from that. And if you have a friend that you can chat through with it, if a journal's been a really great place for me to, again, let my thoughts come out of my head and onto paper and become concrete. I would kind of process that a little bit because it may be holding you back, where it may be something very real that you need to work through. But that's what I would recommend. Be a little curious on it. Regardless, I would still grab it. It's good information. So if now's not the right time, you have it for when you need it. And I'm hoping the time is right for you, because it is such a gift. And if you're feeling even the tiniest little nudge that you should, or like curiosity about it, grab it. It's very helpful, and I feel really confident that something from it is gonna bless you as you enter into this holiday season.
I love that. Even if it's just one thing, I would throw out there too to everyone listening. It's like we have like 5 main tips and then some additional like resources that you can use to kind of put those tips into action. But even if you were to use like one tip and not any of the resources, or maybe one of the resources and not really any of the tips, like that's okay. That it's there to serve you. And so, if you don't have to use it as like we built it, you can use it however is going to help you. So we just want to help you. We want to be there to support you guys. So yeah, I hope it's a blessing. Hope it's helpful. And just wanted to give you the last word too. First, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's really great to talk with you. You're so articulate. You're just a good woman. Thank you for being an advisor to Resort as well. I'm really grateful to have you behind the scenes, kind of help steer the ship and give your advice in certain scenarios. And so anyway, really grateful for you, for everything, all the wisdom that you shared today and your vulnerability. And just grateful. So thank you. But yeah, in closing, please, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say my pleasure. Thank you. Like my pleasure.
Amazing. And yeah, just final word to you. Any final advice or encouragement to anyone listening right now who maybe feels the weight of the holidays coming up, or maybe they're listening in the midst of them? Yeah, any final encouragement or advice for all that?
Enjoy the season. It is designed to be enjoyed, and it's okay to have a little bit of fun with it as well. And just again, remember there is hope, there is joy, and there is peace in this season. And if you don't have any of that, you can borrow some from me. You can borrow some from others in your life as well. But that is something to lean into during this season, regardless of what your circumstances are.
Again, if you want the guide, 5 tips to navigate the holidays in a broken family, just go to restoredministry.com/holidays or click the link in the show notes. Again, that's restoredministry.com/holidays or click the link in the show notes. That wraps up this episode. If this podcast has helped you, feel free to subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Not only is it the best way to avoid missing future episodes, but the more subscribers that we have, the more the apps will actually suggest our show to people who are looking for help, and it only takes a few seconds. But if you've already done that, feel free to rate or review the show. We appreciate that feedback, and that also helps people find the podcast. In closing, always remember you are not doomed to repeat your family's dysfunction. You can break that cycle and build a better life, and we're here to help. And keep in mind the words of C.S. Lewis, who said, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending."